Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Drs. Teyber and McClure. Dr. Teyber received his PhD in clinical psychology from Michigan State University. He's also the author of a popular book, many, but this is one, Helping Children Cope with Divorce, and he co-authored with Dr. McClure a casebook in child and adolescent treatment, cultural and familial context. His work is focused on the effects of marital and family relations on child adjustment, child rearing practices, and attachment styles, and the counseling relationship itself. He's the director of the psychology clinic at Cal State San Bernardino, as well as president of the foundation board of directors at this university. He's interested in supervision and training and enjoys maintaining a private practice. Dr. McClure, who grew up in South Africa during apartheid, received her PhD in clinical psychology from the University of California, Los Angeles. She's currently conducting an attachment-based parent-child therapy interventions project with incarcerated mothers. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Dr. McClure and Teyber. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome. Barbara, I think we should get a third chair, and you should be the third speaker here this morning and just join us. You know what we do as well as we do it. It's a pleasure to be here. You give such a warm welcome, and we just love this work and enjoy sharing it with you. I'm going to start us out today, and Faith will join in a couple minutes here. We have two agendas, and Dr. Grimes sort of gave them to you. Journal of Psychotherapy in June. Doing a special issue on training in counselor education or psychotherapy, how to become graduate training, and has put together 10 different articles by people taking different aspects of clinical training. And the article you read is an article out of that special issue. And come spring, Peter Fonagy and Leslie Greenberg and Daniel Shore and some other very special people have contributed articles on the future of clinical training there and what we ought to be doing. And I'm looking forward to reading it and wanted to bring it to your attention too. So that's the main thing we would like to talk with you about. Or there's two agendas we have. One is the article that you have downloaded, and we're very interested in the therapeutic relationship. That's a big topic. Lots of little nooks and crannies in that big universe. We kind of enter in particular with what we call the process dimension, or working with the interpersonal process. What is transpiring between the therapist and the client? There's the content of what we're talking about. There's also the way we are interacting. And maybe because we're both kind of child therapists by background, we aren't so interested in words, if you will. We're not so interested in, well, you know, we all love insight and we all love thoughtful, accurate interpretations and creative reframing, and absolutely a big place for all of that. But kind of coming full circle, we're sort of interested in almost an in vivo experiential relearning, where the counselor is really trying to discern at core, kind of the treatment focus or case conceptualization Barbara mentioned, what is really wrong for this client? Not which spoke on the wheel, but what is the hub of the wheel where all the spokes are being affected? And we're trying to discern that and observe how that's, trying to contextualize it. Where did that come about in a cultural and familial context? So I don't believe in irrational beliefs. I've never found one. I think clients have very rational beliefs. But once upon a time, it did feel that the world was against me because it was. Or it did feel I was going to be destroyed because they were. Or I'm going to be violated or abandoned because I was. So that's not a current belief. That belief doesn't fit the current reality, but we think it fits the developmental and cultural and familial experience. So that's going to play out in current relationships, and it's also going to play out between the therapist and the client. And so that's where I use that word in vivo, or experiential relearning. Faith and I want to, there's this, Barbara gave the term corrective emotional experience. So many people have told us it sounds like orthopedic shoes. That it's kind of such an alienating term. We sometimes try and go to reparative relational experience, but CEE is the term in the literature. And that, you know, choose your jargon, schema, we're attachment-oriented people, so we talk about internal working models. But also if you can tolerate the jargon and work your way through that object relations, introjects and object relations, we're really all talking about the same thing in different depths. But I think the client comes to replay aspects of this core original basic fault, to use an old-fashioned term, or generic conflict is an old-fashioned term, or what's really wrong, as we hear. That's not just talked about in my conflict with my spouse, my best friend, my children, my partner, my somebody. Aspects of it start to get played out between you and me in our current interaction. And what Faith and I are saying is, if that reenactment is occurring, you who grew up taking care of your mother with a generalized anxiety disorder, your alcoholic father, your something, at some level you're going to start wanting to take care of me too. That's your role, that's your identity. This is your means of securing, fashioning something of an attachment. But if you and I just replay that, this is a repetition and not a corrective emotional experience. So we're trying to give the client a real-life experience of change in our current interaction, which expands the schema or alters the internal working model or challenges the voice of the introject. And once that occurs, that's the core of therapeutic work. That's the heart of the work. Once that occurs between you and me, we find it, I don't want to say easy, but we've crossed the continental divide and are now sliding down towards the Mississippi or the Pacific, and it's easier work to generalize this experience of relearning to significant others in your clients. Well, I listen to you. I don't try to seduce you. I don't dominate you. I don't betray you. I don't leave you. I don't control you. I don't fill in the blank. Who else in your world doesn't do that? And some people have no people. Most people have some people. But clients will start to answer, well, my so-and-so, so-and-so, they will respond differently. I'm not sure about so-and-so. So no, I'm going to get the same old, same old. People know with great clarity and specificity where I can get the different response and not. So in a nutshell, that's our model of change. But that rests on, at a blackboard, I don't like blackboards, but I would just write up, I guess, one comment. It's really what this whole article is about. And there's different words for it, but my favorite term is process comments. Irving Yalom in a group psychotherapy context is, to me, the master of the process comment. I'm so old that I actually had the fabulous opportunity to know Virginia Satir. And you know, I remember driving down the 10 freeway and just talking to her about how she tried to change families. And she said, oh, it's very simple. I just enter the family and I kind of listen. And after a few minutes, I figure out what can't be spoken or talked about. And then I break that rule and make it safe to make that overt, and I do it. So again, it was very much an experiential, in the moment. We're going to behave differently here and now than we do at home. Other early family therapists also talked about process comments. The first journal in the family therapy field was called Family Process, and it was this notion of not the content of what we're talking about, but the way we are interacting. But to work with the corrective emotional experience, to provide the client the experience that some relationships with some people sometimes don't go down the same old familiar lines. You know, and people put people into boxes. This is what men do. This is how women are. This is what black people, white people, young people, old people, people in authority, that's what they do. And when you or I respond differently, that challenges or starts to expand that schema. That's the window we're looking for opportunity for change. But to do that, and as you read in the article, we think a process comment makes all these relational interventions like saffron around rupture and repair. Bob, you've come late again for therapy. I'm wondering if something has gone on between the two of us that isn't feeling quite right to you, or a part of you wants to be here, but some part of you doesn't. Can we buddy up and partner up and talk about that? It's a process comment. Why is it a process comment? It's an invitation to talk about you and me and our current interaction, and also done with tentativeness and an attitude of not knowing. People use the phrase skillful tentativeness. I don't really know. I'm not going to interpret this, or I'm not going to make him feel guilty about this. You're not motivated yet. No. Help me understand. A part of you wants to be here and a part of you doesn't. Let's look at both sides of that. I'm breaking the social rules. Whatever family you come from, whatever cultural context you came from, almost all of us grew up with strong prohibitions to not talk about current interpersonal process. Most of us grew up not talking to our father or mother about our current interaction and what's going on between us. And as you see in the article, we recommend that student therapists do not take this to their personal lives and start talking to their mother and their father and their boyfriend about this. What we're talking about is easy to say and extremely hard to do. I'm saying extremely hard to do because from your developmental, familial, and cultural context, it was verboten. Unless you came from a pretty securely attached family where straight talk about my genuine concerns was welcomed and received. Most of the people you and I are talking to in therapy, this is not a part of their universe. I'm colorblind and I don't see red. This straight talk that we're going to be talking about doesn't work. So we just want to narrow the screen to graduate student therapists in training, to therapist and client. And we try to make it very overt that we understand we're breaking the social rules. You were taught that nice people don't do this. We don't want to be intrusive. We don't want to be demanding. We are not confrontational people. I don't like to be confronted. I don't want to confront anybody. If it feels like what I'm going to do is going to feel confrontational, I don't make that process comment. I'm not trying to put anybody in the spot, not trying to make anybody feel uncomfortable. But with a respectful attitude, tentative context, I can say, you just told me about this very sensitive issue about blah, 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 sexuality. Susie, what do you think I'm thinking as you tell me about your experience with him in the back of the Ford 150 Saturday night? What do you think is going on in my head as I listen to you tell that to me? I'm making a process comment. I'm breaking the social rules. What's Susie going to say to me? Be Susie. My love.
Well, I'm thinking that you don't respect me. You think I'm a slut, maybe.
That's so painful to hear, Susie. I'm so glad I asked you that. So I can put a silver stake through the heart of that huge misunderstanding between us. No part of me is thinking anything like that. I do not think you are a slut. No part of me is disrespecting you or judging you in any way. but I am feeling concerned about your safety and well-being because I don't want you to get hurt because you matter to me. Pause, Susie. Like a Woody Allen movie. Right there. Thoughts about what we just did. We'll go on with it, but what do you see in here? I made a process comment. I invited her thoughts about my thoughts, about our current interaction. And what did we get? A huge distortion. We got her schema. We got her internal working template. Thoughts about that?
Empathizing. That's Matthew Beck, MFT 86507. Just your ability to empathize with her schema, to be able to hear it, empathize with it, and to kind of contradict the way she's feeling, so that she feels more comfortable with you, so that you can you're being more relational with her.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
People misunderstand it. They think of, Barbara's talking about all these wonderful words. You know, I think really, is Winnicott, is Bowlby, is Rogers the core of it, all of them. Empathy, attuned responsiveness. To a lot of people, they dismiss that as being nice. But I'm not trying to be nice to Susie. And I am trying to be empathic. But it's not a global, general thing. Highly specific. Barbara's talking about case conceptualization. I feel Susie just told me her life story. Susie just said, I'm a slut. Susie is consumed with shame. Do you all agree with that? So what are Susies who are consumed with shame? How are they going to deal with that shame? What are the symptoms we're going to get? Anybody?
Get honest expressions of feelings.
They're going to hide.
Right.
Let's get the microphone.
Judy Kelly, Psy 87524. You won't get honest expressions of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
She'll hold back.
She's going to hide her badness.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say another thing. You were non-judgmental,
Yes.
which will make her more comfortable and open up even more with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's empathic or non-judgmental in a global way, but we are trying to get at something more differentiated or more specific. I think, and we'll go on with it and see if I'm right. I might be right and I might be wrong, but I think I just hit the nail on the head. I think I got, not that her whole life got wrapped up in one, but her core conflict was being played out with me. That I too, like others, have treated her, she feels worthless, spoiled, ruined, worthless, a slut, and is judged harshly for her badness. And I am, and all of you are saying it, but I'm wanting to emphasize, I'm trying to get at a specificity to empathy versus a globalness. In my response to her, I am trying to, I'm trying to disconfirm the schema. Remember I was using that word in vivo or real life or experiential relearning? I'm saying right now, I, Ed Teyber, have heard and seen your shame and self-hatred around being a slut, and I'm saying I'm not feeling that. If I was a better therapist, I probably would have added, I'm hearing maybe that a lot of people in your life have judged you very harshly, but that's not what's going on in my head right now. No part of me is judging you, but I think you matter, and I'm concerned about your safety and well-being. I'm trying to, in vivo, real-life experience of change. This is that corrective emotional experience. At least this one guy, this one time, this one moment, not my dad's, not my boyfriend's, not a lot of people that matter to me, but I'm not getting the same old, same old. I think this is the moment of change. Right here, we're at everything we talk about kind of boils down to this point. We're trying to get to the client to that point where, in this way, their central conflict is made overt as it plays out, these corny phrases that are so powerful, in the here dash and dash now. Right now, between you and me, this is going on. And in our real life relationship, I'm saying, no, I'm not responding like others. Comprende? Other questions about this? This is our teaching point. We can go on, and I write books and articles, but it's hard for people to get this.
Bonnie Delgado's site, 87504, sorry. Going back to when you first did that, I had an aha moment. I mean, it was just like a slap in the face. I understood how you said very little, non-confrontational, and she opened up, and putting it from her head into how she thought you saw it told you so much about her. I mean, it's just, I'm blown away by that, and I think it's awesome. And I just want to comment.
What's your first name again?
Bonnie?
Bonnie, it's the process comment.
Yes.
So there's this stupid, fancy, jargony word, right? But let's use it. I made a process comment. I broke the social rules. I asked about you and me. In this case, what's your experience of me right now?
Mm-hmm.
And we can go a whole lot of different places with process comments. They always break the social rules. You're all not supposed to do this in your family of origin. I don't do this in my family of origin. But it reveals the central conflict. And it provides us the opportunity to provide this in vivo or experiential corrective emotional experience. And I'm glad you're seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts, others?
Yes, hello, my name is Luis Cruz. I
You take
take
this one,
in
Faith.
Psi A703. I have two questions. Based on the presentation, by interaction, as it was mentioned, and using the terms empathy or sympathy, can I share or disclose my own personal experiences with my clients? And the other one was mentioned, Virginia Satir. She was able to practice touch therapy. How it could be explained in terms of CE? Are you agree with touching therapy about Susie, for example?
So I didn't quite get the question, sweetie.
I couldn't quite hear it.
Okay,
either.
using the terms empathy
Yes.
and sympathy, can I share or disclose my own personal experiences with my clients?
Usually when we do a process comment, we talk about the experience we have of what the client might be struggling with. So it's not so much that I'm going to share about myself. I'm going to keep it to my experience of the client. So we still stay focused on the client. It's still about the client, and it's not about me, it's about the client. So that keeps it going, and it's a self-involving statement rather than a self-disclosing statement. Do you see the difference?
Okay. And now the second is about
Can we pause
Virginia
there?
Satir.
We think when we make the self-disclosing comment, that often takes the client down their developmental lines. I'm now entering your experience. I'm now meeting your need. If you're attached to people who, probably most of our clients are preoccupied. They grew up with their head in their parents' need. What's my mother feeling? What does she experience? What she need from me? What can I do to stay connected? And as soon as we go to the self-disclosing comment, I got a divorce too. My child died too. I blah, blah, blah too. That client is entering our experience. And usually we find that to be a reenactment. Same old, same old. And it feels good and it looks groovy with the content, but it's the same old song. And what Faith is saying with the self-involving statement, as you tell that to me, John, my heart breaks. As I hear what he did to you, I think the shame is on him and not on you. These are my own feelings or reactions to your experience in the moment. And we think the self-involving comment is very powerful. We think the self-disclosing comment gets just a place for it, and occasionally it works, but we think it's a pretty We think it leads to the reenactment, not the
Right.
corrective experience.
Right, it changes the focus. The therapist becomes the focus, not the client.
So my second question was, is okay to use touch therapy with Susie, for example?
Touch therapy?
Yeah.
Usually you want to be very careful with touching a client who's had any kind of abuse in their lives, who hasn't had choice about whether or not they get touched. So you will have to wait a while and know Susie's history before you would even touch her on the shoulder, because that may be a boundary violation for her. She has a history that may involve being molested, being abused, and as soon as you start to touch her, she's wondering, are we going down an old road that I've struggled with before? And that safety, which we're trying to provide, gets lost. So we want to maintain safety. If Susie has been deprived of touch all her life, and no one has ever been warm and loving toward her, then touching her on the shoulder as a means of connecting with her can work, but it's going to be client specific. And with some clients, you just do not cross that line.
I thought I would jump in with.
Very-
Oh,
Can I finish this one before we transition? I'm very interested in compliance. I think so many clients' symptoms and problems revolve around having to comply with the wishes or demands of others to remain attached. So even if that physically or sexually abused client, we might say, would it be okay for me to give you a hug? Well, out of compliance, this girl's learned I have to go along. They're going to say, oh, sure, that'd be very nice. And the therapist hugs them and does that in a responsible way and thinks this is a groovy thing. And maybe the client doesn't come back next week, comes late. We would ask a next question. Susie, if you didn't want me to hug you, or you didn't really want to hug me, would you be able to say, no, thank you, Dr. Teyber? Would you be able to say that to me? Well, that might be kind of hard to do. Yeah, it might be kind of hard to do. What would be hardest for you about telling me, no, you don't want me to? And then we're right into, again, I think this core central issue in her life that's being played out between you and me right now. And it's around compliance issues. Thoughts there, Faith?
Yeah, that to say no to someone who is in authority is not acceptable in my developmental history. So I'm not going to say that to you because you might leave me. You might stop being my therapist. You might be hurt by that. And so I give up my need in favor of your need, which would not be good for me, given if I've had a history of abuse, I didn't have choice about what happened to me. And to now be repeating that with my therapist does not bring about safety, and it violates that sense of being safe and not being asked to do things that I don't feel comfortable with.
So the corrective experience that follows right after is, I'm so glad you can tell me, no, I really don't feel comfortable, and it doesn't hurt my feelings, and it doesn't make me feel rejected. Actually, I really love hearing your voice, your assertiveness. I think there's a strong, healthy part of you, and I'm hearing it and seeing it right now, and I'm loving it.
It makes this relationship a whole lot more authentic when the client can tell you exactly what they want and don't want. And so in this role play, the client's ability to say, I'm not really comfortable with that, makes this relationship a more honest, more authentic, more real relationship.
I thought I'd jump in with a question from
Please.
the online audience. A learner is curious if either of you, perhaps earlier in your careers, have used process comments that have backfired for some way, maybe caused the client to become angered or frightened and build up more resistance. And how did you go about getting the rapport or corrective emotional experience back on track?
Well,
We'll both answer. You go first, Faith.
when the client sort of says, "Well, I'm not so sure. I don't know that I can tell you no." You realize that your request was not appropriate, and so you back off and you acknowledge the client's strength in saying, no, this doesn't feel good, and you reinforce that, and you reinforce their authentic voice.
We talk in the article about kind of a sequence. We're not cavalier about this. We're not casual about this. We're not a loose cannon shooting from the hip. We make prefatory comments. People talk about client induction into treatment, like we explained in the beginning, and we think it's telling them what our degrees are and all that. We go a different place with it. We say, in therapy, I think it's helpful if we can speak more directly or forthrightly than we do out in the world. And how does that sound to you, or how would that be to... And so we give them that upfront heads up that this is sort of coming if they have concern.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say, I would like that. And other people say, well, that might be kind of hard for me. And then we're just going to go to what would be hardest about that. Usual answer is, we get it from a traditionally sexual, socialized female. Well, it wouldn't be very nice. Or I'm a Christian and I wish to be polite. And we just do, well, I share those values. I think it is important to be kind and respectful, but I think you can disagree with me, or if I'm doing something that doesn't feel comfortable or isn't helpful or you're not liking, if you spoke up and told me, you'll find that I won't feel disrespected or that you're being impolite. I'll feel that we're good partners and we're working together. Mm-hmm. So we do prefatory work, one. Second, we make all process comments with skillful tentativeness is the phrase. Blocking on his name. Can you help me? Forgetting one of my heroes' names is just late dementia. I'll say it in a minute. Donald Keesler uses the term skillful tentativeness. As in, I don't have the truth and I don't have the answer, and you and I know that's true. And so, to the client, it's, I wonder if maybe sometimes that's tentative. That's pretty easy to say, nah. It's more like this. Oh, great. It's not like that. I get it. It's like this. Tell me more about this. And so when we make process comments, they are always tentative. I often look at the ceiling. It's like not an in-your-face thing. I just was kind of wondering if maybe. Very casual, very light touch, very easy to say no. And if I do that, I'll go more than a decade without having somebody take offense at a process comment. That's pretty good. And I mean that, and I've thought about that answer, because in the question you hear, that student's good question is expressing the anxiety that 99.9% or maybe 101% of student therapists listening are hearing as we talk about this. This was verboten in the family. If you came from an authoritarian family, you didn't talk this way. If you came from a dismissive family, you didn't talk this way. Any kind of hierarchical family system, you don't talk this way. So we realize there's great anxiety evoked. We do it glibly because we've done it for decades, but this terrified me in the beginning. So the students expressing the anxiety about doing this. But let's say once a decade that happens. You're going to think I'm being difficult or weird or something, but I would often say, I would make another process comment.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I mean by that? Oh, Hank, I just said da-da-da-da-da to you, and I don't think that felt very good to you. Can we talk about that for a minute? If I've done something that's hurt your feeling or intruded or felt confrontational or didn't feel right to you in some way, that was not my intention. Can we sort out this little bump in the road together? What Saffron Moran called rupture and repair. Now, as a second-year graduate student, I'd be quivering with anxiety at that moment. But once you kind of get this, it is as easy as pie. And then once the person sees that you're not putting them on the spot, and you're not insulting them, and you're not in their face, and you're not challenging them, and you're not doing what people have done before. Rupture in the working alliance has just occurred, to use that language, and now I'm going to repair it. And how am I going to repair it? With a process comment. That's what we were saying in the beginning. I'm sure it doesn't mean much to many people if you don't kind of new to this work, but so many of these relational interventions, they're so powerful and effective, like the corrective emotional experience, like rupture and repair, like forming and establishing and sustaining a working alliance, providing a corrective emotional experience. To us, it's all predicated on the ability to make process comments or work with the process dimension.
Hi, continuing with what you were just talking about, if you're in a rupture and repair moment, and as a clinician, you're quivering inside, to use your words, do you recommend self-disclosure at that point? In other words, telling the client that you're struggling with the interaction? Or how would you handle that?
Well, let's get our language right. I'd be
Okay.
making a self-involving statement if I said, right now, I'm feeling really uncomfortable as we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I might make that, but I would probably usually want to keep my anxiety to myself. I don't think that would be in the client's best interest. And I would do my very best Meryl Streep and say, I am so glad that you're taking this big risk right now to speak up in this very appropriate and direct way and tell me that what I just said didn't feel good to you. This helps our work, Hank. Thank you very much. Tell me more about this and what felt bad, and let's sort this through together. Your thoughts, Faith?
Right, I agree. Because if I start talking about my anxiety, the client then is often going to feel that they need to help me out. And that's not what we're about. We're about clarifying the relationship. And so I'm going to stay with what the client's experience is of what just happened and talk it through.
These are great questions, everybody.
Great answers.
In some point, can I say, as you say, self-involvement, can I say, for example, right now, I also feel anxiety as you, but as a normal human being, we have anxiety emotions. Can I share that with that person at the right moment?
You can say, I'm feeling uncomfortable about what just went on right here. What's your feeling about the interaction we just had?
So it's better to use terminology more deep than just anxiety.
Yes.
So
but
it's,
it would-
the thing is to confuse the client
We
with
don't
my
want-
anxiety.
Yeah,
No,
we
I don't want
wanna-
you to tell. I don't want to tell you that I also have anxiety, but I feel uncomfortable.
I'm not.
In some point, it's similar.
Something happened here that didn't work out between us. So let's talk about that. I'm feeling like something didn't quite work out in what the interaction we've just had. So can we sort it out together and clarify what's going on?
What Faith is saying is not whether we're all humans and have anxiety. Of course that's true. But Faith is taking it a different direction. She doesn't want to take it to self-disclosure. That's not going to be in the client's best interest. It's often going to be a reenactment of familiar relational patterns. And so instead, Faith is saying, I'm trying to take this to acknowledge what might be going on between us, to make that more overt, and to sort that through and resolve it between us. That's the different direction that she is recommending.
Yeah, rather than staying with, I'm anxious.
I was meaning in a way that self-disclosure maybe is by saying it happens to me sometime in the past, but by self-involvement it's the right time, right? The right moment.
In the moment is when you would use the self-involving statement, because we're often working in the here and now.
Yes.
And so we're not dealing with past experiences. It's the here and now.
I just had a quick question. If the anxiety, if you're recognizing it, that maybe it's being triggered by some kind of countertransference, where let's say you're talking with a client about sexual abuse, and you and yourself have had a history of dealing with that. How are you able to overcome that anxiety, let's say, or overcome that countertransference and make the focus on the client and take it off of your own personal experiences? And I use that just as an example.
One of the things that we often encourage is that you do your own work. And in having done your own work, when you meet up with a client who has issues that trigger yours, you're going to be focused on the client, and you're going to stay with the client's experience rather than going to, I've had that experience too, because that changes the focus from the client's need. So it's always thinking, what's in the client's best interest? What's going to facilitate the client's resolution of the issue that they're bringing? And so if I bring in my history, I'm talking about myself, and I'm not dealing with what the client really needs at that point.
So that's an empathic failure. If, as Faye says, she enters her own and starts talking about this, and we're sisters in this mistreatment, it looks and feels groovy, but I think actually the client has lost an empathic other. The therapist is now in his or her own experience and not in yours. And I think with sexual abuse, we can almost say at the core of it, you're a slab of meat. You are the perpetrator is so disconnected from your subjective experience. I know it's a weird word to say it, but maybe the deepest wound is the lack of empathy for the person I'm using. And I know, so obviously to talk about ourselves or not is not the same as sexual molesting, but there's a theme or a pattern. And dynamically, we want to provide a response that doesn't go down the old familiar line. And so when Faith says, I'm going to do my own work, she's going to say, my history is activated. I'm going to go talk to my good supervisor about it, or I'm going to go talk to my good therapist about it. And we need to be responsible and do that. Because you and I and all God's good little children got countertransference. And it's not whether we have it or not, it's how we manage it.
Yeah.
And we manage it by keeping it to ourselves within the hour and going to a supervisor, and if it can't be contained there, we go to a therapist. But we're going to try and provide a corrective emotional experience. Give this client experience that's not what has happened before. I'm going to stay centered in your experience.
Right.
And continue to be attuned and responsive to you.
Right.
Hello, my name is Ralph Jones. I'm a student in Psych 87560, media psychology. The client wants to know you're very authentic and is able to empathize with him or her and asks deliberately, what's your experience as it relates to his experience? For example, what's your experience with divorce? how do you respond and being faithful to the process? I mean, the self-involving more than the self-disclosure.
You respond to the client and ask, how will knowing my history be helpful to you? What's it going to give you that you need? Your question is coming out of a need, and often the need is, do you understand me? And so basically, if that's what the client says, is I'm asking this because I'm not sure you understand me, you can say, well, let's work together and see if I am understanding you and I am able to give you what you need within our relationship. Because the client doesn't really care about my divorce. It's about the impact of that on my ability to understand the client. So I'm going to go to the underlying question, which is, do you have the ability to understand me? And I'm going to respond to that question more so than the specific content of, are you divorced or not? Have you been divorced? So I'm going to go to your question. What is it going to give you to know whether I'm divorced or not? And usually the client will say, I'm looking to see if you can understand me, and you work with that part of it.
So I'm going to say, let's don't talk about divorce. And I'm a guy, I've written a book on divorce. Let's don't talk about divorce. Let's talk about your divorce and what mattered in that to you and what you're struggling with from that. And bring me in on that, and you decide if I'm helpful or not. And if I'm not, tell me. And if I am, let's keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Should we finish our role play, Faith? No.
There's a question. No.
Please.
I'm Judy Good, and it keeps coming back to me. This is more a comment, I guess. You keep talking, it seems that it comes down to clarifying and validating. That with everything that you're doing and saying, you're really clarifying and you're getting down to that core of the thing that they least want to reveal to anyone in the world, and then you validate them there, not the dysfunction, but you validate that person, and then you can start moving forward. And I think it's amazing how quickly you can get to that point with this process.
Thank you. Barbara's got a chair. Would you come, Ingrid, get a chair here? You're saying it better than we're saying it. It is that we are using process comments, not in some global way. Being nice is a nice thing, but it's not a therapeutic intervention. It doesn't help the client make change in their life. We have to, I had a very good physician at one point in my life, and he said, I had a rash and I did blah, blah, blah. Couldn't figure out what it was. And I could see he was distressed about it, and I wasn't. And I said, well, why are you so... So you invite another doctor in. I'm sitting here naked under these little lights, and they're like looking around. I had an allergic reaction to penicillin. I'm not getting it, I go, what's the big deal, John? Chill. He just looked at me. I just remember this phrase here. It says, Ed, if you can't name the demon, you can't exorcise it. And I went, oh. And about 2 minutes later, he said, you get penicillin again, you're going to stop breathing and die. Thank you, John. Glad you named the demon. I'm glad you, as you're saying, with clarity, what's really wrong. Mm-hmm. And Faith does this so much better than I do. It's very hard. I think I can formulate a treatment focus and kind of get what's wrong. Faith, I don't know how to teach it. Faith teaches it very nicely. But that is exactly what we're trying to do, is sort of clarify what's really wrong. And these process comments reveal it. And then once it's revealed, I think so many therapists don't want to go there. What do I do next? I feel inadequate to respond. I've now caused them to hurt and feel this pain. I'm a monster, or Now, what do I do to fix them? All that nonsense. You're saying it beautifully. We use the process comment to clarify and get to the emotional heart of their problem, and then we're just going to be validating, and that is the word we use. We're going to validate them, affirm them, maybe compassionate, maybe would be the word.
Mm-hmm.
But validate is really it. You get us. I feel seen and heard.
And you can't validate until you've done that clarifying.
Right.
Right.
You can't validate until you've done that clarifying process to where you get to that part. They just don't, they think it's so bad, no one, they don't want to reveal it, and then you just validate them there. Give them a moment to just breathe. I think it's a beautiful process that you're describing.
People miss it. To write about it, it's very, that topic is very hard to write about. You sound so corny, you know what I mean? But I find if accurate empathy provides what the attachment people would call a safe haven. I feel seen, I feel heard, I understood. And in the next 90 seconds, I get a behavioral red light, green light. Anxiety goes down.
Yeah.
Depression lifts. The person becomes more insightful and puts two and two together. Person takes an interpersonal risk with me and reveals more information or deeper feeling so I see the change usually within the next 90 seconds.
Yeah, because they said the worst and the world didn't end.
Exactly.
And they felt validated.
Exactly. Yes. And, as Ed was saying, that what people bring to the therapy setting, there's nothing irrational about it. It is rational given their life history. And so in that process of highlighting and clarifying what the demon is, if you will, they can be seen and heard and understood. And once they feel that, they can go further with the safety that you give them.
It's beautiful.
Having a quick example of just what you're sort of saying. Asian student went into a student counseling center at a spot we know recently, sat down Friday night at 5 o'clock, said to the therapist, I'm going to kill myself. The therapist says, what happened? I got an A- on my chemistry test. And the therapist went down, you're catastrophizing. And it didn't go, and the client went away and came back, saw a different therapist that we know and love, and pretty much the same start. I came before, I did come back, I'm thinking about, I just don't want to be here anymore. And the therapist said, you're suicidal. What brought this on? I got an A- on my chemistry midterm. The therapist said, help me understand. Are you telling me that if I'm not perfect at all times, I am just completely cut off and alone and bad? Help me say it. And the accurate empathy just led to tears, and suicidal preoccupation went away. Accurate empathy is so powerful, but people dismiss it as being nice. And being nice isn't helpful. Accurate empathy or attuned responsiveness is a change agent.
Another question from an online viewer. She loves your reference to naming the demon and then exercising it. And she's wondering, with process comments, is there any concern about perhaps bringing a client's core issues so quickly and directly before them? And is there any strategy or technique for kind of stepping your way toward that?
Do you want to go first, Faith?
Go ahead.
We want to go at the client's speed. And through many decades of supervision, it's so overwhelmingly clear to me that most beginning therapists are concerned about going too fast and revealing too much, and the client can't take it and is going to decompensate or get worse. And as I watch video, I see the exact opposite happening. That the client wants to be heard and wants to enter painful material, and the therapist doesn't want to go there. And so the client is trying to lead and initiate and bring I'm really upset today. I saw my doctor yesterday, and it didn't hit me till today, but he said there's this lump on my breast and he doesn't like it and he's ordered these tests. I'm just scared to death. The therapist says, oh, they can do so much with this now. There's so many ways to treat it. It just went on to 18 minutes of reassurance. And when he said, you know, she said, I'm scared to death, and you're not really approaching that affect. You're scared to death. Yes, tell me more. You're not trying to enter her experience, you're trying to reassure it away. Yes, it's just the first session. She's not ready to go there. But, I'll call him John, you didn't lead her there. She brought that to you. That's the repeated experience we have. The client brings material to the therapist, and the therapist wants to not meet them there. So I think that that's the usual problem, not the one that the student is asking. But if it does go the student's way and the client distances, we can do one of two things. Often we just say, ooh, they can't go there. They need to back up from this. Let's do this at the client's speed, see where they land, and meet them there and work from that spot. And that's usually what we do. If I'm further along with somebody, I might say, you know, when I just brought up this, I felt like you jumped away from it. Did that go on between us? Was something about that not safe or not a place you want to go right now? And if you don't want to, just tell me and we won't.
Right, and that's respecting the client's level of working, the client's speed, and making that comment gives the client the opportunity to say, this is going too fast, I'm not ready to enter that material. So I'm in total agreement with Ed that generally therapists are afraid to approach the issue that the client is bringing. Is this neutrality that really becomes passivity, and it's not joining the client where the client is and what the client's really bringing to the table.
Hi, Faith and Ed. Thank you all for being here. I have a question. Many of our students themselves will be teachers and supervisors. I was thinking of this as you were talking earlier, Ed, is that not only do our clients come from these hierarchical families, but we as therapists come from hierarchical families. And the question is forming as I'm listening to you, but our education system itself is set up in a hierarchical fashion. And as I read your article, it was implicit in the article for me as I was reading it, is any comments that you might make to the effect of what would be suggested then for education, for teaching therapists or supervising therapists, in light of the fact that many of our teachers, many of our supervisors themselves were hierarchically informed, how to host this kind of safety, this kind of trust as therapists in training themselves run up against these resistances. Am I really supposed to be this present, this here and now? Do I risk being fallible in front of you, my teacher, my supervisor? Just any comments kind of in that zone. How do we create a space for propagating this vision that you're bringing today?
I think that as a supervisor, you are going to treat your supervisee the way you want your supervisee to treat their client. And so that parallel process operates with what you do with your supervisee. And you treat them with authenticity, with empathic attunement, and that process that you bring as a supervisor to your supervisees is the process you want them to take to their clients.
In the article, Bob, we have that 4 square of those 4 attachment styles of the student therapist or the supervisor. And we're saying that securely attached student therapist, which is a minority, I think welcomes this. This makes sense. I want to engage. They sort of jump in the pool and go right with it. It's sort of like I just needed permission to do what I want to do. But for that anxious, ambivalent, or preoccupied, certainly for the dismissive, category D, or the we prefer sort of that back and forth approach avoidant. For each of those, they've never seen anybody talk like this.
Right.
No one has ever talked to them in an empathic way. Or Barbara was saying it earlier, attuned responsiveness. They didn't grow up with it. They don't have a vocabulary for it. They don't have words for it. And all they can do is slip it into categories they know, like being nice or being polite, and that's empathy. No, that's not what Carl Rogers was doing at all. He was a laser. So I think that, I think practicing instructors and supervisors have to role play it and demonstrate it. And I think if you just read it, we put it into our own category of this is confrontational, or this is too much, or this is in your face, or something. But if you see somebody do it, and you say this is respectful, this is collaborative, this is egalitarian, I think you have to see somebody use the words. So I'm big on the role play, or the demonstration, or video. I think people haven't had role models, Bob, of anybody ever, sadly, of anybody in their life ever talking to them like that. And so they need to see it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think if you don't get that, you can't make it around the block and incorporate this into the way you work.
Yes. It's a question back there.
Just hearing the last question about the supervisory and the hierarchical roles. I'm a business student, so that kind of brought a question to mind. Has this been explored in a business concept, like supervisor to employee, as far as like conflict resolution within a workplace? Has it had any applications outside of therapy? Is there any research or information on that?
We do it when we are in the business world, and we are often asked to help resolve conflicts, and we use this process in terms of dealing with the conflicts that supervisee have. So there is a little bit of that in that way. You can talk more about it as a foundation.
Kind of silly, but so we're at a university with 22,000 students, and so there's 11 restaurants. There's $24 million in grants and scholarships. There's a child care center. There's parking. It's a big corporation, really. And so for the last 12 years, I've been president of the foundation board, which oversees everything on campus that makes money. And so I'm in there with lawyers and stockbrokers, and they just keep, every other year, they keep re-electing me as the president. And I help these people talk to each other. And we're back to sort of clarifying. And I also approach conflict. Well, I hear you saying that, but that's not exactly what Bob just said. There's a difference here, and we're going to head off in two different. Can we clarify this? But yes, I just feel like I'm making group process comments. And then they made me vice president of the philanthropic board of governors. And the president doesn't show because he's a 100 millionaire and he's flying around the world. And I sort of take the same role. And it strikes them, and they speak to me regularly. You're different. I've never heard anybody talk this way. This is helpful. People like it.
There's a question over here.
Most of what we've heard today is applicable to individual clients, but what you just said makes me think that this might be very effective in family therapy situations, couples therapy. Can you expand on that application a little bit? When you have more than one client in the room, how can you be empathic and use these process comments to each and between them, facilitating that conversation as well?
You highlight how each person in that setting is operating. And when you speak to how they are treating each other and treating you, they begin to see how what's going wrong at home is being replayed right there in the therapy setting. So they bring that style of conflict that goes on at home into the therapy setting, and one person will be the spokesperson for everyone, and you address that, and others are disengaged, and you're able to, it's actually very powerful when you have a family or a couple in there, because they can begin to see that what they struggle with on the outside, they're actually doing in the setting with you, in the therapy with you.
This approach came from, in my mind, the early family systems people. This is Virginia Satir, it's Carl Whitaker, it's certainly Murray Bowen, Mnuchin, all those early family therapists were really working with the process dimension. And also very much, I say Yalom, but this group psychotherapy tradition.
Yes.
All these, this process orientation or process lens came from those
Large group
modalities. And I feel that's still my basic core, or the most, to me, all these theories offer me something, and I see limitations with all of them, but my most basic identity is as a family systems person.
Mm-hmm. And that leads me to my next question. You mentioned that using process comments can be applicable from any theoretical orientation and of use to any clinician with a certain theoretical bent. How can you make it such a universal applied technique or way of approaching when there are some differences between orientations? I can see where it would fit, but can you speak on that just a little bit more, please?
At the end of any first session with any client, I'm going to look at my watch, and 5 minutes before 10 till, I'm going to make a process comment. And I could do this as a psychoanalyst with a client on the couch, as an interpersonal dynamic person, as a self, as a attachment informed, as a cognitive behaviorist. It wouldn't really matter. But I could say, how was it, Susie, to talk with me today? And you, Susie, are going to think I'm insecure, and you want to be a nice person, and I need to be reassured, and you're going to tell me how nice I am and understanding and how helpful. And I say, well, that's nice, and I'm glad you found me helpful. Was there anything I did today or that went on between us that didn't feel so good, or you would like us to do next time? And then somebody might go a little deeper. Well, you da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, you didn't like that. I'm so glad you're speaking up. We're going to work well together. I like straight talk too. I think this is a strong part of you. Or maybe they stay with, you're just so kind and nice and thank you very much. I'd say, well, you know, I appreciate that. I'm not confrontational. I don't want to be. You know, if I did do something that wasn't right for you, didn't feel comfortable, you didn't like it, what would you do? Would you be nice and go along? Would you get mad and go away? What's going to happen between us here in therapy? What am I doing? I'm trying to clarify and get more specific about our ability to talk about you and me and what isn't working right here and to sort that through. 60% of clients drop out before the fourth session. Faith, you can get these numbers better than I can. We got them in the book. The dropout rate in psychotherapy, we're just simply failing as a profession. Pan theory. And I think if you, at the end of the first session, how was it to talk with me? What felt good and what didn't? This is very much a you and me here and now process comment. And if they say, well, no matter, and it can be very small and very little, but maybe just sometimes a little bit da-da-da-da-da, I have to embrace that. Oh, I'm so glad you've told me that. Thank you very much. Yes, I can see why that didn't feel good, and I'll have my try to do less of that. And tell you what, if you see more of it, why don't you just put up your finger number 1, like you're doing it again, and I'll try and shut up. And in other words, I'm going to hear you, and I'm going to accommodate to you. And I'm defining our interaction on a process dimension as egalitarian. And that problems can be named and talked through and are not a source of danger. For all our clients, when they had conflict with their parents, when there was rupture in attachment relationships, there was usually no mechanism to repair. How do we get back on track? And so this becomes a corrective experience. We're gonna have misunderstandings. We're gonna disagree. But and so what are you gonna do when that happens? People answer it. Well, I go along. Well, I'll just fade away. Well, they'll just tell you.
What might keep you from coming back this next time? You know, if I'm here next week this time and you're not here, what might have affected your not coming back? Like, whoa, I guess I would just not show up. You know, I feel like I told you too much and I would be afraid to come back and see you because you know too much about me. Oh, I'm glad you're telling me that. Let's talk about that. Let's make this a safe place for you, a place where you can share all of those things and still feel respected and cared about and seen.
I think Faith's sentence there is just pure gold. If I'm sitting here next Tuesday at 4:10 and you're not here, what's happened for you? What's gone on in your head? And people usually give you an answer. And we don't just, sometimes we ask it early in therapy. Student therapists just think I want to rain on their parade. I can't have happiness. But as soon as they tell me about, I had this very powerful session, I had this big disclosure, the client entered this big thing. I said, that's fantastic. And at the end of the hour, did you say, how's it going to be to come back and see me next week? No, Ed, you don't understand. It was really great. We were just really connected. And so you didn't follow up. Well, I hope she returns. I hope she's back next week. But there's a good chance that whatever threats and unwanted responses she got when she took this big risk with others and was different with you, it's going to enter her mind and make it hard for her to come back or hard to come back at the same spot. It's one of those things where you just hate to be right, and you usually are.
Yeah.
They didn't show. So when clients make a big step or a big disclosure, take a big risk, in particular, that's when we say, if I'm sitting here next, you've shared so much with me today, Susie, and I've been so touched by it, self-involving comment. I want to ask this, if next Tuesday at 4:15 I'm sitting here alone, what will have kept you away? Your client is not going to say, I don't know. Or they're going to say, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you're judging me. You have to be nice because you're a therapist. You can't respect me, but you get paid for it and you have to do it. Your supervisor makes you but you don't want to. I can see you're a good Christian woman. You don't want to be with somebody like me. Now that you know this about me, they'll go right to the source of their resistance, and once we've clarified it, we can
work with it.
I always say if you can talk about it, they don't walk about it. I think we should maybe take one more and call it a morning.
I just had one quick one, and I know the gentleman next to me had a quick one as well.
Okay.
I was watching this fantastic tutorial on some of Virginia Sauter's work, and I saw the active process, the family therapy session, and it was interesting. The woman that she was working with was talking about her mother and these comments that her mother were making, these detrimental comments, and it was fascinating because Sauter was able to bring her to this place of having an empathic nature towards her mother, understanding that that was her mother's expression of love, that her mother actually just wanted her to have a better life than she had. And as soon as she was able to look at it from her mother's perspective, you could see that psychic change going on. So how important is it, I guess, is it important to teach or maybe to show a client how to empathize with the people in their lives that they're struggling with as well?
I think clients benefit from understanding another point of view and being able to see things from multiple perspectives. It helps them in their own lives. And so often we will help them see intergenerational issues often are at the core of some problems that clients bring in. Their mother was molested and couldn't see them when they were molested, and so we kind of talk about, there's this multi-generational issue or problem. Seeing things from different points of view is useful, but we don't want to have the client feel that their point of view is not acceptable. We want to still validate that their experience makes sense and is worthy of being talked about and being addressed. So even though we might have them have empathy for the other person, they can still feel hurt by not being seen, by not being responded to, even when they have empathy for that other point of view.
I think if Virginia Satir was here, I think she would be looking for genuineness and not selling empathy. So we're sort of saying it here. For some people, I think the response might be empathic to what led the parent to the spot to act in this way. But some people are not deriding their child as a way to express their love for them. They're doing it out of their jealousy for them, or their resentment for them, or their wish to. It can be for lots of different reasons. And I'm going to want to sort of sort out client response specificity. For this client, what is that derision about, perhaps? In the article of ours you're looking at, I'm saying it's come out in this special issue of psychotherapy, and there's a superstar in the field named Peter Fonagy, Fonagy, and he says the fourth core condition is, he calls it reflective capacity, and Faith just called it perspective taking. That we're not embedded in just that one point of view, one framework, but I can step out of this and look at it from different perspectives. And he's saying across theoretical orientations, when therapists help the client see an interaction from multiple perspectives, people get more adaptive and flexible in their behavior.
Mm-hmm. Do you have time for one more?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, one.
Just a quick one here. In terms of prevention, I see where this model is very powerful for couples or for individuals. But in terms of prevention, and I'm looking, being an educator, I'm a school psychologist, I'm looking at young people. How can this model work well to really teach certain values that society needs? And have you developed any work in this area?
So working with children, working with high-risk families, we use this model in helping them develop reflective capacity, being able to see the other person's point of view is very important. So we do work with high-risk families and work with the children who are at risk for negative outcomes.
What about general population? Because within each of us, there is the worst of us. And having been an educator for so many years, I've seen we're wonderful children. When it comes to relating very well, there is a deficit. So outside of the at-risk, how can this be planned and be presented in a school setting as a way of teaching good skills for later life?
We work on having them develop secure attachments, and really it's that secure, safe haven and secure base that we really want our children to have, because if they are secure, they're going to be able to be genuine, authentic, have empathy for others. So the process that that underlies it all is the attachment dynamic of safe haven and secure base. Because once you have that, you're able then to relate to others, to be honest and authentic with others, to see things from multiple perspectives.
Kind of silly, but I'll tell you a little bit about Faith works in the jails, works with jail moms, women who have profound sexual, physical abuse histories, get involved with drugs, prostitution, and checks to not feel what happened to them. Grew up visiting their mothers in jail, and then they got these cute little 3, 4, 5-year-olds, this multi-generational cycle, visiting their mothers in jail. So Faith, and so there's been a lot of parent training classes. No impact. You're just telling people what to do. Miss Faith does something different. She first provides a grief and trauma group therapy program where, as Ingrid is teaching us, she kind of gets down and clarifies and names what really happened and who did what and who didn't protect and how alone with that and the shame it left you with. And it's named and validated and with compassion. And this is the first time these women experience it. So now that I've experienced empathy or attuned responsiveness or compassion to at core what is really wrong for me, phase 2 is parent training. And she teaches parent training to these kids and helps these mothers hear what their child just said and enter into their experience and be more validating or empathic parents. And it hugely enhances the parent-child attachment and the child's functioning. And
right. So when the parent feels seen and feels understood for the first time, I've had parents say, this is the first time I realized that parenting is about the children. You know, they did not grasp that being a good parent was about responding to your child because they had not had any responsiveness before themselves. And this is the first time they feel seen and understood, and now they are able to see and understand their children and give them a new experience. And that reduces the likelihood of that child offending and becoming a delinquent, as these mothers were given their own history.
You have asked us very thoughtful questions. You have engaged with us very directly, very respectfully. Just been a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be with you. Best wishes to all.
Yeah.